This is a Media Lab podcast. How do you like my new cape, Dave?
That's a lot of sequence.
It swishes as I move.
Yeah,
it swishes real nice.
It's something. Can I leave it at that? It is a thing.
What would your superhero power be if you were to have a superhero power?
Probably pleasantness. I think that'd be a good one. Yeah.
That's a bullshit answer if I've ever heard one.
Well, what about you? What's your deep thought on this?
Well, I'm already invisible to the world, so I might as well just take that on. In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I'm a pleasant man, David.
And I'm the machine.
A podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. Although we do tend to talk about the idea of the movie rather than the movie itself. And we are trucking along here talking about movies from 1999. Today, we're going to be watching the film Mystery Men.
In a place called Champion City, the forces of good and evil
Captain Amazing, what a surprise.
are about to collide.
Well, we've always been each other's greatest nemesises. Nemesis.
Nemesis.
Now, with the city's one true hero missing,
Captain Amazing is in danger.
Kaboom.
who will step forward
You again, wannabes.
to answer the call of justice?
Don't mess with the volcano, my man, because I will go Pompeii on your butt.
Oh, my golly.
So Dave, I'm curious, what is your history with Mystery Men?
I'm excited. I haven't watched this movie in a long time. It is one of the digital video discs, which I still have in my possession. I can't remember the last time I watched it, probably more than 10 years ago, but I really liked it, whatever it is. And I think it was, the height of that little, I don't know what that team was, but the Janine Garofalo, Ben Stiller sort of, right? Sarcastic mid-90s comedy.
I feel like before we even start watching this, my sense is that this has that contingent of alt comedy people from like the mid to late 90s that were big for certain people, but most people didn't care about.
No,
there was that core group of people that we cared about.
It was big for the people I care about, which is me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was big for me. Such a prick, Kyle.
I have, once again, this feels like a recurring theme here for the last few movies. I know a lot about this movie in that people have praised it. People say it's like was ahead of its time a little bit, that it got a little bit forgotten when it originally came out. And I've never seen it. Never seen a single frame from this movie other than I know the basic plot setup for this movie.
That would explain your complete lack of humor.
Well, I guess we shall see. I'm excited to see it. This is, of course, to put this into context, this is pre-X-Men films. This is of course, like Marvel taking over the world and like owning Hollywood for the last decade. So it is a very different world that this superhero film came out in. I think the Schumacher Batmans had probably just finished their run at this point. So I think that's what people had in their mind when they thought superhero film. So I'm interested to jump back and see if it holds up to our modern day sensibilities or if it's just a product of its time. So let's do that. I'm going to go thank some sponsors because Dave refuses. It's in his contract. And when we come back, we'll be talking about Mystery Men.
Down with capitalism.
Hey there, everyone. Just Kyle here again, here to talk about some of the people and organizations that help this show going and convince you that it is not just sheer force of will and an inability to admit when we're wrong. Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This episode of Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. Park Power has low overhead, and chances are you'll save money if you switch. You can find out how much money you could save by visiting parkpower.ca and plugging your numbers into the Alberta Energy Savings Calculator. If you decide to switch, it's easy. Nothing changes about your service, only the price you pay. Learn more at parkpower.ca. Today, I also want to tell you about ATB's new podcast, The Future Of. Join Todd Hirsch, ATB's Vice President and Chief Economist, as he connects with special guests who offer unique and useful perspectives about the future. Explore how our economy and communities can not only brace for change, but embrace the opportunity it creates, from the future of women in business to the changing nature of work itself. The Future Of helps us understand what's coming and what we need to do today to get the tomorrow we want. Featuring 2 episodes each month plus bonus episodes, The Future Of includes interviews with top community and business leaders from Alberta and around the world. Subscribe to The Future Of in the Apple Store, Google Play, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are found. And connect to ask your questions about the future by emailing thefutureof@atb.com. All right, well, we did it. We watched the movie, Dave.
Yeah.
Were you crying at the end?
I like this movie still.
Okay.
There are things that have not aged well. I think it was fun. I had some good laughs. Mr. Furious is one of the funniest things ever. I don't know if we want to spoil it.
I definitely did not hate this movie, and we'll leave it at that. So let's go through some backstory here. Mystery Men was released August 6th of 1999. It came out the same week of The Iron Giant and The Sixth Sense. So it was a pretty stacked weekend when this film debuted. Currently, it is rated 6.1 on IMDb, 65 on Metacritic, and then over on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 104 critics' reviews, it's at 61%. And based on 133,258 user reviews, it's at 57%. So pretty close, the users and the critics. Although technically, I think that means it is a non-fresh film. I don't think it's reached the threshold that it needs. It's available on DVD and Blu-ray. You can also buy or rent it on iTunes or Google Play Movies, but not on any streaming services as of right now. Its budget... Hold on to your hats, folks. Its budget was $68 million somehow. It opened to $10 million. Domestically, it would make 29. Internationally, it would make 3. So its total was $33 million or $51.4 million after inflation. So it did not even get half of its budget back at the box office. Its plot description from IMDb is: a group of inept amateur superheroes must try to save the day when a supervillain threatens to destroy a major superhero and the city. It stars Ben Stiller as Furious/Roy, Jeffrey Rush as Casanova Frankenstein, William H. Macy as Shoveler/Eddie, and Hank Azaria as Blue Raja/Jeff.
They only named those. Such a male-centric world. I thought Ginny...
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. You would think that there would be at least one female in this group.
Ginny Gruff.
If it was made today, it probably would be.
Yeah, the bowler's such a important and crucial... She might be the only one with actual superpowers.
Does she show up at the beginning of the film? She does not. She shows up at the halfway mark. I'm sorry. This is what the machine did. The machine maybe just went to IMDb and looked at the first 4 names in the list and decided from there who to pick. Who knows? Hank Azaria was born April 25th, 1964. His first roles were on TV movies in the late 1980s, but his first feature film was in Pretty Woman from 1990. It would be pretty hard not to say that the single biggest cultural impact he's had is by providing the voices of dozens of characters on the TV show The Simpsons. Some of the big ones are Chief Wiggum, Moe, Kirk, Lou, Dr. Nick, Cletus, and until recently, Apu. He began as a guest star on that show's very first episode and soon became a series regular until the present day. He's done other voice work as well as taking on highly acclaimed supporting roles in films like Quiz Show, Heat, The Birdcage, Godzilla, and Dodgeball.
That's a great movie.
He's also, Dodgeball's great, which also stars Ben Stiller, so good to know. He's also been able to star in a few highly regarded live-action TV shows, first with Huff, which ran for 2 seasons, and then most recently Brockmire, which just finished its 3-season run. He continues lending his voice to The Simpsons, and up next is a short film called Ask Me If I Care. Its plot description is: Rhea, a freckled, self-conscious teenager, searches for love and identity in the 1979 San Francisco punk scene.
I feel like there's a missed opportunity to read the synopsis of this podcast.
Hank Azaria has been providing both of our voices from the start of this whole
it's called
thing.
Ask Me If I Care. It's great. Yeah.
William H. Macy was born March 13th, 1950. His first role was as a teenager in the TV series Another World, but he wouldn't come to prominence until the early 1980s. One of those early roles was an uncredited role in War Games. He'd spend his time being a guest star in TV series for years, until finding some success in films such as Benny and June, Searching for Bobby Fischer, The Client, and Mr. Holland's Opus. The late 90s would be fruitful for William H. Macy, as he finally found his groove being in high-profile roles in Fargo, Ghosts of Mississippi, Boogie Nights, Wag the Dog, and Pleasantville. For the past 9 years, he's been starring on the TV show Shameless, but currently there is no upcoming projects. Favorite William H. Macy role?
Oh, I don't know. Name them?
Fargo is pretty hard to beat, personally.
I like him in I like him in everything that I've seen him in, but because
he's one of those great character actors. Like, he just shows up and like, oh, it's William H. Macy. This is great.
Yeah, even what was that crappy movie, Maiden Heist? It's not a very good movie, but he's great in it. You know, he's weird. He's got a great. He's got a lot of range, Kyle. He's got a lot of range.
I mean, from 1 to 3, but yes, he's got a range. Dave, I'm going to send you over the next things that the machine wants us to read.
Let's take a look here. Geoffrey Rush. Born July 6, 1951, he was born in Australia. Rush would begin in the theater and come to high acclaim for his command of the stage. He would jump to film in the 1980s, being in a handful of movies such as Starstruck and Twelfth Night. They would be a large...
Well, it took us 5 tries. That was great.
We'll leave them all in, just for the documentarian authenticity of the recording. There would be a large gap between those movies and his next role in Shine from 1996, which would win him an Academy Award for Best Actor. Is that Rachmaninoff? I think so.
I don't think that's who he's portraying, but he's a pianist in that one.
Yeah,
yes.
The thing he can't get is Rachmaninoff's...
right, yeah.
I can't remember.
I think you're right
piece.
then. I think it is a Rachmaninoff thing.
From there, he would become a well-known character actor, popping up in things such as Shakespeare in Love, Quills, Frida, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, Munich, and Best Picture winner The King's Speech. The last film credit he has is Storm Boy from 2019. There are no upcoming film roles. Ben Stiller was born November 30th, 1965. His first role was as a guest star on a 1986 episode of Kate and Allie. He would dabble in comedy. That's a great word, dabble. Even being a writer for Saturday Night Live in the late 80s, before starring in his own show called The Ben Stiller Show, which ran for 3 seasons. He would then transfer to movies, having starring roles in Reality Bites and an uncredited role in Happy Gilmore. He would try his hand at directing, while also starring in The Cable Guy, Zoolander, Tropic Thunder, and the drama The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Is that drama? Dramedy?
I mean, I think it's more drama than comedy,
That's
that movie.
Probably fair. It's also, just weird.
It is weird.
He's lent his voice in the Madagascar series and shown up in a smattering of films. This is clearly written by you, Kyle.
What are you talking about?
Shown up in a...
You don't use smattering in everyday speech.
Well, I think I use it in a different... No, I don't. I just don't.
Well, this machine does take over my mannerisms sometimes, so...
All of these written opinions are mine and mine alone.
But his last high-profile role was in the Meyerowitz Meyerowitz. Meyerowitz, right? In the Meyerowitz stories from 2017. There are no acting roles upcoming. However, he has been announced as being a director for an episode of the upcoming series Super Sad True Love Story.
I think it should be also pointed out is that there is, no matter how talented you think Ben Stiller is or is not, there is maybe a certain degree of nepotism with his father being like huge comedy star back in like the 50s, 60s, and of course on Seinfeld and King of Queens, that sort of thing.
That's clearly a little bias there, a little anti-Ben Stiller attitude there.
No, I love Ben Stiller. I'm just saying. It's not like he was like, he crawled up from like the lowest ranks of comedy to have a career.
Fine, but I don't think he says that. He's not one of these guys that, like Nick Cage, who tries to hide his familiar, ties by changing. He's been on talk shows with his dad since he was a young man. He owns it. Kyle.
Don't call me Coppola. Don't call me Coppola.
Hey, you're the Cage fan here. You're the Cage fan.
Bees. Yeah.
Oh my God. Written by Neil Cuthbert, based on the comic book series written by Bob Burden. Neil Cuthbert wrote the great, in Kyle's opinion, Hocus Pocus movie before this film.
Yes. Which I love that movie. It's a great movie.
Bette Midler?
Yeah, Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy.
Oh, right. He then wrote this film, and then The Adventure of Pluto Nash. He's written nothing else since then. Poor Eddie Murphy. He's got to carry that.
It's a very short CV. It's these 3 movies. That's it. So, there you go. I guess, apparently, The Adventures of Pluto Nash came out, and then nobody wanted him to write anything else.
They were just like, no, who knows? Hopefully he's got a full life around him. Directed by Kinka Usher. He made a name for himself by directing car commercials for Nissan and Volvo. Mystery Men is the only film he's ever directed. I'm just thinking suddenly of the Jean-Claude Van Damme Splits truck commercial for some reason.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that was him or not. Maybe it was. Who knows? But it's interesting that at least the creative direction, the writer and director, both do not have like super long Hollywood careers. I don't know if this film was the cause of that or what, but
I'm not going to make a big argument defending them that they should be making movies in Hollywood. As we'll discuss, I like this movie on different merits, let's say, than its filmmaking, whatever you want to call it, not nuance. But
well, let's get into that then. Dave, hit me. What is your overall thoughts of this movie? Mystery Men. Of Mystery Men.
You got to leave that in there because clearly that's painting a picture of what you thought of Mystery Men. I liked it. I think it's funny. It's got, it relies so much on the cultural knowledge of 60s Batman comic book sort of lore and visuals. And like you brought up in the intro, we come to it now with a completely different worldview of what comic book movies are supposed to be like.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's necessary. I should point out before I talk about my feelings, I don't think that necessarily is the movie's fault. But it is just a different context. There's no way to approach this movie without having 15 years of comic book films in between.
Well, just
this and
it goes to show too. Like I can't remember if we brought this up before, but when the first Iron Man, or even Christopher Nolan's Batman, but when the new epoch started, they shook the movie world because they were films, right? I mean, Iron Man was a little bit more campy and fun, but it was a film. It was like it had a big movie budget and structure. Whereas this one, like you talked about, alt comedy, indie, it looks like it could have been made for TV. But I don't know. I like the writing. I like the concept. I've never found the comic book after I was a fan of this movie, but I love the inversion and the fun concept of the guys that just can't make the cut banding together with just completely ridiculous anti-superhero powers. It was fun.
They're basically all Batman. Like none of them actually have a superpower.
No. They've got superpowers, right? I mean, I can't shovel the way the shoveler shovels, right?
Well, you got me there.
The funniest super.
You are a pretty nifty bowler, though. I will say.
The funniest superpower has to be Invisiboy. I love the intro where he's like, when I'm by myself and nobody can see me, I'm invisible, and as soon as someone looks at me, I'm not. And But it's true, actually, right? He has a power, Kyle. You're dismissing him. He saves the day.
He legitimately has a power. It's shown that he actually can disappear.
Well, that's the thing. So fuck off with your judgment, Kyle. No one has superpowers. They all have superpowers.
At the end of the day, don't we all have superpowers when you really think about it?
I know I do.
Neither of you do. I could crush you like the flakiest of pastry.
I have something deep inside of me.
You're called Resentment Man for a reason, Dave.
And you know what I really liked this time around, although I thought it was funny to begin with, but the Phoenix and his Buddhist, Taoist, tautological idioms, if you want to call it that. I found it extra funny because that's how I frame my spiritual life now with these aphorisms,
where none of them mean anything really when you break it down.
Don't they, Kyle? Don't they?
Oh, wait a second! You just blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, as a film, it's corny. It's weird. Speaking of character actors, what's his face is Captain Amazing?
Greg Kinnear.
Greg Kinnear. I mean,
who's great. I have to say, he's probably my favorite part in the movie. Weirdly enough,
well,
is his portrayal of like the Superman character.
I loved. He was great for that, and I loved as an actor how he goes from arrogant, cocky, sellout dick to complete desperation at the end, and he just. He plays that really well. He sweats in it. I don't know if it was spray on. And I like Jeffrey Rush a lot in it, as one-dimensional as his character is just, it's just silly.
What a great name, I have to say. Casanova Frankenstein is just...
Clearly...
It's a great name.
Clearly from a
It's
comic
ridiculous, but it's a great name.
Yeah, it has to be from a comic book writer. Hollywood writers are not capable of that kind of insight.
You're here first, folks. Hollywood writers can't write for shit.
Hams. I thought it was fun.
Well, here's my... I know we just finished watching this movie, Dave. We just finished watching it. It's not as if I watched this movie like 2 weeks ago.
No. We were
and
just
because of scheduling conflicts where we're not able to actually record until now. I'm just going to say that if that were the case, it's really hard for me to remember a single thing that actually happened in this movie.
Okay, can we put a quick caveat that it's not like you didn't watch anything between then and now?
You don't know that. You don't know that.
If hypothetically speaking, if you had to put a number of movies, television shows, musicals, and events that have happened in the hypothetical world of 2 weeks.
I mean, there might be a cool 24, but we don't know that, Dave, in this hypothetical world that you have constructed.
Fabrication.
Anyways, what I'm saying is because I don't have any nostalgia really for this property, coming into it, it's like, I don't think it's awful. That's not my position here, but it's just like, it's a movie that happens. And I think part of it is because of that time scale. Again, I don't think it's necessarily the movie's fault for not like predicting where superhero movies were going to go. But what I will say is I think it's this weird situation where this is absolutely based on a comic book. And it is commenting on stuff that was happening in comic books, but not really commenting on stuff that was happening in superhero films. So it's this weird thing that it's satirizing something that if you were not a comic book fan, I don't think there's an in for you as much if you're not a comic book fan. So I felt that like dynamic a little bit weird. However, having said that, I've always loved the movies that are like it's a ragtag bunch of people who have to come together and defeat the evil thing. Like I've just always liked those types of films, and I do like how they decided to take the Greg Kinnear, not Captain Fantastic, Captain Amazing, who is this like inversion of the Superman character, and do this lovely like spin with it. Like he's totally sold out. I love the fact that no one knows who he is when he puts his glasses on. You know what I mean? It's like, but he wears glasses. He can't possibly be his alter ego, right? So I like all that kind of stuff. It's great. I think it gets a little bit too bogged down, like going around with all of our like trio of heroes a little bit. This is a movie. Let me just double check it here. See how long this movie actually is. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's a 2 hour long movie. I think out of anything, this needed to be like 90 minutes total. They probably could have cut a lot of the fluff out and really just pared it down. I felt it dragged a lot in the middle portion of it for sure. There's some good comedy beats. There's some good interplay, but at the end of the day, there's nothing about this movie that ever makes me want to watch it again. I don't think it's like, a super clever comedy. There's some good comedy beats, like I said, but I don't think it's particularly directed well. Yeah, there's no in for me really to get into this movie. I feel that if this was, it wouldn't be this direct adaptation, of course, but I can understand what people are saying where it almost came out a bit too early. Of course, there have been like the Superman films, the 4 Superman films, and there have been the Tim Burton Batman, the Schumacher Batmans. I'm trying to think if there's any like other big superhero films that would have come out at that time. I don't think there had been, unless you want to count Swamp Thing. Like, had this come out even like a decade after this, like in 2009, I think you could start to play around a little bit with what it was satirizing and commenting on, and people would have been a little bit more open to it. You can see that obviously people were not flocking to see this movie. Whether that was because of poor marketing, I don't know. But I think there's people that have a bit of too much nostalgia for this movie because I don't think it necessarily holds up. That's my position on this movie, at least.
You know, when you brought up needing a connection to the comic book world, I think you're dead on. Because, you know, the late 90s is when Marvel and DC hit this wall where people stopped giving a shit about them, and Image and Dark Horse came out.
And they were writing, let's call a spade a spade. It was bad stories.
Right.
Like, they had bad stories in the Marvel comic books at that time that were not engaging people.
And I think I wasn't a total comic book nerd in this. Like, I didn't go to signings, or I didn't have like a wall. I tried to, and I got in trouble. So we won't get into that bitterness.
Because you tried to sign them yourself.
No, I just had parents who thought comic books were the devil.
Oh, I see. Got in trouble that way. I see.
The context in which I watch this movie is knowing where, having a sense of where comic books were at that era, and not comparing it. Like you just brought up, I don't know if I can name comic book movies of any importance around that time, other than Tim Burton's Batman. And I'd completely disassociated myself from Schumacher's world. And then I was a big fan, of course, of the late 70s, early 80s Superman. You know, Christopher Reeve was amazing.
Right.
So there are parts that do play on that, but the trope is more comic books, and it makes sense because it comes from a comic book that's meant to make fun of other comic books. It's not written as a movie to make fun of other movies. So I think, I completely agree with you. I think if we were to just leave this in the realm of movies alone, the movie doesn't actually make a lot of connections. It's kind of stands alone in and of itself. I think you underplay a little bit some of the comedic, let's call it, energy of it. But I also suspect, everybody has a different sense of humor. I've always liked, like, Janeane Garofalo, this dry sarcasm, Ben Stiller, particularly in this era, and Zoolander stuff, because he's just an idiot. It's fun to watch him because he's insane. And then the character actors, it's funny to bring up, I forgot that Hank Azaria, it was the voice of Apu, but the Blue Miraja was such a ridiculous character. But if anything, he's probably the weirdest and most ill-fitting of the group. But and then the silliness of what's the sphincter, what are the farting guy? That stuff doesn't play anymore. But that was still a trope that worked in the 90s. It's gross.
I think you're right. And we often do this on this show about trying to put ourselves back in 1999 sometimes. And I don't think this tone is like drastically different than what you would see in a lot of 90s films in of itself. I do think, not that I know what we're going to be reviewing next week, Dave, but if I was to make an analogy, I think that what usually holds up better for comedy for me, I'll just speak for myself, is comedy where the people portraying it, the actors, are not getting too hammy with the roles, where they're almost playing it straight. We're like, I'm serious, I'm talking about this, and then funny things happens around them. I find those hold up better than like, I'm mugging for the camera and I'm like real trying to make this like joke work. That always kind of reeks of desperation a little bit for me. I just want them to like just allow the comedy to breathe instead of being like, I'm hitting a punchline right now, so you should be laughing. But again, 90s films were a lot like that. Like, watch any Pauly Shore movie from the 90s or Jim Carrey movie. Like, they're all like overacting so that you are hopefully laughing as the audience member.
They're literally slapping a stick in your face.
You froze up for a moment.
My internet connection is unstable. Your internet connection is unstable. Machines.
I mean, aren't we all unstable, really, when we think about it?
No, absolutely not.
Before you can be stable, you must be unstable.
Right?
That's the aphorism that I'll use.
Yeah, but that's true. Come on. That's a thing. The Phoenix is the best. I think, to your point, the pieces that I like the best were pieces that the humor comes out of the writing instead of the visual jokes. So,
Yeah.
the fart jokes and all that kind of stuff don't really play for me. So, for example, when Invisiboy finally becomes invisible, I think it's hilarious. And all the lead up on how he describes himself and how they roll eye. I mean, that stuff's really funny.
Yeah.
But I think that when I was younger,
Well, I think that's a great joke because it's a great joke simply because like you're getting led to believe that he can't do that, and then he can.
right.
I think that's such a lovely he actually can do this. This is great.
And I think, the slapstick part is him being naked at the end. And I think that didn't play as well as I remembered. I mean, I knew it was coming because I've seen this movie several times. And that kind of stuff doesn't age that well because,
Let me ask you this, though. I wrote this down. Why, when he becomes invisible, do his clothes fall off?
yeah, it doesn't make any... I mean, because it's just a shitty visual joke. Like, why is the sphincter in this movie? You don't need his character at all, other than just being gross. I thought the waitress thing was a little weird, but I think that's a comic book trope, and trying to find himself through this budding relationship. It was okay, but I also thought, is it Claire Forlani? Anyways, the actress that plays the waitress, she's not a great actress.
Yeah.
So the parts where she's in are pretty wooden.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things that I think it's overly criticized too. I sometimes even in modern filmmaking, which is, it feels like they felt compelled to have this love storyline when I don't think this movie needs it.
Yeah.
There's no real reason. He's already friends with this group. Like, have one of those people be the one who's kidnapped that they have to go and rescue. Like, we don't need to introduce this other character that he is romantically involved with.
And they have that natural connection between Janine Garofalo and Ben Stiller, kind of as peers and comedians. You could easily throw that storyline. It almost felt like they were going to go there anyways because they start teasing each other and have that antagonism, which I thought was kind of fun, if not funny. And so you could have this sort of coming to know yourself through those already established. So I agree. I thought that part was quite heavy, but yeah. And then there's some silly stuff. I don't think a modern audience will think Disco Boys is that funny anymore. That kind of silly idea of what disco was has disappeared. People just don't make fun.
By the way, I don't know if you visited the IMDb for this movie at all. Do you know what one of the actors is? Sung Kang from the Fast and the Furious
that's
franchise.
awesome. He's in there in makeup.
He's in the background. You don't see him very
now
quickly.
I feel like I have to watch the movie again. He's back, man. He's Han is back.
Oh, he's back. Han is back. Spoiler alert for the new Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, and then they had the Goody Mob sort of with their cameo, which was kind of corny. The one thing that I did like, even though I think this trope's gone too, I like that the frat boys are all 40. I thought that was funny because they've all aged, but they're still, drinking their brewskis. So I kind of chuckled at that. Yeah, you know what other
you know what I loved in this movie?
What's that?
The fact that they play All-Star not once but twice.
God, yeah, but
in this movie,
the 90s, as we're learning,
like if you wanted to see like the pure 90s-ness of this movie, it's that they play All-Star twice in this movie.
You know what we need a separate episode, Kyle, is music and scoring of 1999. I swear to God, they're reusing the same song.
Not good sometimes. It's like, yeah.
Like, how is Smash Mouth...
I'm sorry to everyone who loves All-Star, but whatever.
How is Smash Mouth in every other movie we've watched this year? It's like, I don't know. It's unbelievable.
I'm pretty sure this is the second time we've heard it, but...
I think Smash Mouth, weren't they in Idle Hands? It doesn't matter.
I mean, I will always say, one thing I actually really do love is I love any time a movie casts Tom Waits in anything.
Oh, man.
Because I love the fact that he speaks like he just smoked 20 cigarettes and then came to set.
He's awesome. He's just himself. And I loved his non-lethal inventions. They were fucking hilarious. Even though towards the end, they just don't make any sense. But that intro of how they're all non-lethal is pretty hilarious.
The other two things I have written down here is that there is a phrase, I forget now which character actually says this, but I also am a big fan of people who mix up sayings or aphorisms. And so the exact quote is, "I don't need a compass to tell me which way the wind shines." And I don't know why, but this cracks me up because it doesn't really make any sense, but they're also mixing up two different thought processes there.
But isn't that the Furious's character, that he gets all of his quotes wrong?
And then the other big thing too is I think that this is the one, I guess, piece of thematic filmmaking that's going on that I think is kind of interesting, definitely from a 90s take here, is like how they're trying to fight against cynicism, like that is kind of what the subtext is here. It's like, we're not superheroes and we can't fix anything, so we might as well not even try. And it's like the Ben Stiller character's like, no, we're going to actually try and do it, and we're going to overcome the odds, sort of thing. And then he falls into cynicism and everyone has to pull him out, which is a fairly standard trope in 90s filmmaking too, I think. But I think this does shoot forward where so many of our like prestige dramas and even superhero films now have to have this healthy dose of like, the world is awful and it's never going to get better. Like that's like the overriding messaging, which gets pretty depressing to watch over and over and over again.
Yes, which is why we've argued about the MCU. What I like too is, speaking to that point, that in the end it's the family man, William H. Macy, who's got to pick up the mantle. So it's like there's a sense of balance.
I think I agree, because in another different hands, I think it would be the Ben Stiller character that would be like the leader, but he realized, no, I'm not a good leader. William H. Macy is the good leader.
His existential crisis is actually pretty funny too. When he's in the truck and he's like, I'm not furious. I have no powers. He plays that really well. But that's Ben Stiller, right? He does neuroticisms end sentence. I actually wrote in my notes, too much Smash Mouth in the 90s.
Don't ever watch Shrek then, because you'll get it all the time.
My favorite... let me just give you my favorite Phoenix quote. To learn my teachings, I must first teach you how to learn. I mean, that's genius, man.
Know what it reminds me of? And I forget where I heard this for the very first time, but there's like some ancient proverb about that. Like, in order for me, like if I ask you, can you teach me how to bake an apple pie? It's like, yes, but first we must invent the universe, right? Like, it's like, that's basically what you have to uncover and unpack. And that's why I get really angry at monks. So the only other thing I'll say is, from the musical theater fan, they do play Hello Dolly in German in this movie.
Weird.
Which is pretty fun. Yep. Don't know what that says about anything, but that is a thing that happens.
It says something about you, Kyle. It says something about you.
We're done here.
All right. Well, the machine is telling us to wrap up here. So I guess, let's pitch that question that we normally ask each other, or quite often ask each other. Do you think this holds up, and do you think it is culturally relevant still, Dave?
Mostly no. I don't see a young audience caring about this movie. Mm-hmm. But I think, as we discussed, there are themes, like primary themes in it, that would hold up if the story was woven a little bit more intricately, and it would have to be acclimatized to the now prevalent, superhero universe. But I think all of these ideas of making fun of superhero culture would be greatly received right now, because like what's MCU releasing 4 to 5? If it wasn't for COVID, it's 4 to 5 movies a year. It's
and then plus like their miniseries on Disney Plus, television. Like they're really pumping them out. Yeah,
and I think pretty soon, just like with Pixar, they'll be and they already kind of are, but like DreamWorks will get in and make a superhero film. Like it's just, we're overwhelmed.
Like when I took my one film class in university, they mentioned how oftentimes certain genres go through this, evolutionary journey. I don't know how else to phrase it, but it's basically you get like the prototypes, like them trying to figure out what the genre is, and then eventually gets into like, this is the classical examples of this type of filmmaking, and then you get like the anti-filmmaking, so like flips those conventions on its head, and then finally you get into like parody or satire of that genre after it's kind of run its course. And you see this really well with the Western. It's like trying to figure itself out, and it becomes like the biggest thing from like the 50s to like the early 70s or to the 60s. Then it starts to get like the dark Western in the 70s, and then finally get Blazing Saddles in the 80s. And that kind of ends the whole like Western time. We get it kind of come back and forth, but it's definitely not like at the height it ever was. And I haven't really seen, you're sort of seeing like that progression in the superhero genre right now, where MCU and DC kind of figure out what they wanted to say with superhero films. And now you're kind of getting like the anti-superhero films occasionally being brought out, usually not by those studios, but still being made. And so it feels like naturally like Mystery Men should have come years later. And I'm sure it's going to come at some point. And people are going to be like, okay, yeah, you know, right. I can see like the conventions for what they are. And it falls out of favor, and then another big genre will come and fill its place. Who knows what that's going to be? My hope is the dance film, but that is...
I love dance movies.
That's my hope.
You know, the Step Up franchise, there's a lot of gold in there, man. And a lot of shit, but there's some nuggets. You know, I think that ebb and flow transcends movies, and I think, like you brought up again earlier, I think that was what was happening in comic books at that time, and I think even Marvel was getting to the point where they were starting to have to make fun of themselves because none of this stuff made sense anymore until the
it was getting so convoluted, and like none of this makes sense.
Well, you know, it's convoluted. Emerson was asking me about Spider-Man, and I had to answer him like, there's no one Spider-Man anymore. There are 16.
You could have just told him it's Peter Parker.
It's
though.
not
you
though. There's like 16 different Spider-Mans, like currently, whatever it is, currently developed as separate streams of comic books. That schism happened in the late 90s, right? Because you know,
you're
there
right.
used to just, however convoluted stories got, there used to just be a Spider-Man comic, right? Or a Wolverine comic.
There's only one Spider-Man. He's a white teen. Okay. Don't take this away from
early
me, Dave.
20s, he's now a reporter. It took him 60 years to evolve. And then, you know, the stories, there used to be famous artists because they would put the stories on their head with their different style. And that's gone now. And when I walk into a comic book store, I can't go through the standard comic book aisles anymore. I have to stay in a graphic novels or find something serialized because it's very confusing. But I think that's why Mystery Men actually, it only makes sense for comic book nerds. I don't think it makes sense for moviegoers, and I would stretch that out to be 99 as well. I think it's probably why the movie's a flop.
So I also don't think it holds up, is what I'm going to answer to that question. Dave, why don't we get into our ratings? What would you, out of 5, give to Mystery Men?
I don't know. Yeah, I think 2.5. I think I'll go middle of the road. I would do 3, but after we're talking, I feel like, you know, you got some valid points here that I'm living in my head with this movie.
Well, I am going to give it a 3. For me, this is just a very Kyle thing. I find that 2.5 veers into like bad territory for me. So like this is just a movie have kind of already forgotten that I watched. So it's completely middle of the road, 3 for me, which means that we average that out to 2.75. Now, everyone can take a look at these ratings, I should point out, on our Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. KDVSTM, of course, is also where you can find us on Twitter and then on Instagram. But Dave, we have a record-setting tie going on here right now. We are tied with a bunch of films. Let me just run them through here for you. We have Tarzan, Notting Hill, South Park, She's All That, and Ravenous. So all of those are now rated the exact same. Would you put that above them, in the middle, or at the bottom?
And those are read in order, right?
Yeah, so from the top down, Tarzan, Notting Hill, South Park, She's All That, Ravenous. Yep. I was kind of continue to read, but that is it.
That's a tough one, eh?
Yeah, I know. I think I know where I would probably slot this, but
that's what she said. Are you thinking about just above Ravenous, below She's All That? I'm sorry.
So I don't think it's that. I don't think I would actually probably put it between Tarzan and Notting Hill out of that list.
Oh, you would put it above Notting Hill. I thought you.
Yeah.
No, am I thinking of the other?
Oh, sorry. You know what I'm doing? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I just confused Notting Hill with Runaway Bride.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I would put underneath Notting Hill for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking because you like Notting Hill.
Yeah,
Kyle?
I do.
Allegedly. I think we're seeing... No, there's some...
Hey, I'm just a Hank Azaria voice, Dave. Who knows anymore?
What was after Runaway Bride? After Notting Hill was...
So as underneath that is South Park, She's All That Ravenous.
South Park. Yeah, I would put it in the middle. I think I would put it... knowing you, let's put it under South Park. And...
Okay.
I don't know. Do you think above She's All That or below?
Yeah, let's put it between She's All That and South Park. Let's just put it there.
Yeah. I would more likely watch this than She's All That again.
So that means that entering our list at the number 18 position is Mystery Men. All right, Dave, let's read some trivia. So Tom Waits' odd hand gestures when explaining the psychofraculator were the result of him writing his dialogue on his fingers and reading the words as he went along.
Of course it was. It's amazing.
I love that. That reminded, there was a story out that Marlon Brando would do the same thing in The Godfather, which is why he walks around the set so much, is because his lines were like taped to like the window and underneath things. So he was just like reading them off as he walked around. According to Hank Azaria, the cast argued constantly with each other over the comedic tone of the film. Maybe that's why it feels a little bit awkward. Apparently, too, I don't know how well substantiated this is, but apparently, like, Greg Kinnear and Ben Stiller almost like got into a fist fight on the set of this movie. So I don't think a lot of people got along for some weird reason.
As much as I've liked Ben Stiller's work, I imagine, like some people, he's not that easy to be around. He seems like a very intense person, you know?
Oh, so he's the David Yun of Hollywood.
What you keep calling me. You chained me to this desk, Kyle.
Right. I know. I guess that is true. There's some trivia here for you to read out, Dave.
Sure. A number of the sets used in the film are the same sets used in Batman Forever. Can we quickly just talk about how it was so Batman from the 60s more than Batman Forever? The only thing they needed was the spinny wheel.
The spinny wheel, yeah.
Anyways, even the bad guys. I mean,
Batman from the 60s is also what made me want to have a Shakespeare bust on my desk that I could like turn its head open and then like a secret walkway would appear.
How that isn't standard for interior design is still beyond me. I mean, it's essentially...
I mean, I can understand why, like, especially if you're building your own house. It's like, can I have like a secret room with no windows?
As we saw
behind this bookshelf?
As we saw in Parasite, it's probably more prevalent than we think.
True.
The Bowler's stream of consciousness monologue in support of independent filmmaking at the conclusion of the film was originally not intended to be included in the finished print. Janine Garofalo was instructed by director Kinka Usher. It's probably Usher, right? Who cares?
Sure.
To say whatever came to her mind at the time. Usher simply wanted to use up some excess film. Usher liked her performance so much, he edited it into the final print. I mean, it's such a Janine Garofalo ad lib.
It's basically her doing a stand-up set at the very end of the movie. All right. Well, that is some trivia. That is Mystery Man. I guess, Dave, we should find out what we are reviewing here next week.
Okay,
let me just push this button.
Smash Mouth documentary. Come on, Smash Mouth documentary.
I wish I knew what that was called off the top of my head.
Smashing Mouths.
Oh, smashing.
Still smashing.
Yeah. I'm very excited. This is super exciting for me, Dave. We get to watch next week Galaxy Quest.
Oh, nice. A 5.
It's one of my favorite movies that I remember. Yeah. We're going to see a good one. I
feel when's the last time we watched a 5, Kyle?
Oh, it's been a while. The closest is probably The Iron Giant.
Yeah, that was a good movie. That was a while ago.
But that was a while ago now.
Man. All right, I'm ready. I'm ready to feel good about myself again.
Well, talking about feeling good about myself, look at this cape. Look at its swish.
Still a lot of sequins, man.
So swishy.
You should also probably wear clothes under it.